All right, hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Brother Love in the District. Tristan here, along with Jacob. And Jacob, you want to go ahead and tell them what we're going to get into?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the NFL. The season just wrapped up, so we're going to talk about the Super Bowl, our thoughts, and we're going to be talking about some coaching changes that have already happened and possible coaching changes, and then going into hockey. We're getting closer to the trade deadline, and it's the point where it's after the All-Star break where you have to start picking things up. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, so obviously, first things first, I think we should talk about the Super Bowl, which I know you're just so happy about the Eagles losing. But in reality, obviously, after the game, a lot of the people that I know uh, who have my number texted me after the game, and you're one of the only people who were not just sitting there just trying to rub salt in my wounds.
I, yeah, I wanted to be, but that's kind of a dickish move, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
And I
it's
can't really say anything being a Washington fan because you did in 3 years what we've been trying to do for 30, which is get back to a Super Bowl.
yeah, exactly.
You did a complete rebuild pretty much in 3 years and made it
We
back.
went from 4-11-1 to 9-8 to 14-3. That I mean
Yeah,
that's yeah. So and that's the thing that annoys me. It's like the people who uh who are being that way is like all the Washington fans, the Dallas fans. It's like you guys didn't do anything. Like you didn't make it there, all right?
no, but we still have more.
And before we even go on about that, like I'll just add on to why a lot of them are like that, because they're saying the Eagles had an easy schedule and a Mickey Mouse schedule. If you look at it, the Giants, the Cowboys, and Washington all had
We have the
the
same.
the easiest schedule too. So it's called taking advantage of it. It's not our fault. And the only game that I would even remotely come close to saying, yeah, you're right, we had it way too easy, was the 49ers game. But even in that, even without a quarterback, we still had to play the number one defense in the league. And they might have started falling apart at the second half because they were getting tired, but we still had to play the number one defense. So it's just called taking advantage of your situation. Next season, the schedules came out. It's not going to be easy. We're going to have the Chiefs, which if I were to guess with before the schedules come out, I'm going to guess the Eagles Chiefs is probably going to be the first Thursday night of the game because a lot of times they do a Super Bowl rematch. So, and I will tell you right now, I think if that does happen, we're not winning that game because there's going to be a lot of turnover in this season on the Eagles. So, and I'll kind of add on to that at the end of the game or end of the Super Bowl talk. But with that, let's get right into the Super Bowl talk. And going off of that easy schedule, I gotta say, for a team who had too easy of a schedule and were frauds, we held our own
Yeah,
pretty well
that
against the Chiefs, who are one of the better teams in the NFL, even without Tyreek Hill. So
Yeah, that first half you did great. Your defense really didn't have to do all that much because your offense really controlled the game. You dominated time of possession, and that looked like the perfect game plan. But the second half, your defense, there's
it
no other
fell
word
apart.
to say this, it played like crap.
I
It was awful.
I
It's
have to
some of the
say,
worst scheming I think I've ever seen.
and I don't even well. So I think it's there's two sides to it. So well, in the first half, let's go over this. The first half, the like you said, Eagles were controlling possession. Best way to beat Patrick Mahomes. Don't let him on the field. He had 8 minutes of possession going into the second half. They barely touched the ball, and the big reason they were even in that game, and the I think one of the only reasons that they won that game was that fumble recovery that they took to the house. I That was a huge piece of it. I don't know how how Jalen Hurts lost that ball. What
He just
happened?
dropped it.
Yeah, I mean he was
Yeah.
he was trying to run out of the way and it just fell out of his hand. That's something very unlike him. He never had that. I don't think, if I recall correctly, I will double check just to make sure. But if I recall correctly, I don't think he had a single fumble loss this season. He did throw a couple picks, but if he had any fumbles lost, it was a very small amount, maybe one or two. But most of the turnovers that he had, it was all they were all interceptions. He's very protective of the ball, which is a huge piece to being an NFL quarterback. Uh, but yeah, in the first half they shut him down. They didn't let Patrick Mahomes on the field, which is the best way to beat the Chiefs. And aside from that first drive, where they're still trying to feel each other out, the Chiefs did nothing when they did get a chance to get the ball. So they played very well. And then, like you said, the second half, the defense just fell apart. I
Like
don't know what happened. It's
the touchdown to Kadarius Toney, I believe, or there might have been another one as well where like the wide receiver was just completely wide open. There was absolutely nobody near him, and for a team that was that good all season, that I mean, I'm shocked that that happened, and the fact that the team who had the most sacks since the '80s Bears did not get a single sack against the Chiefs. And I thought that was shocking to me because Mahomes was still playing on a bum ankle. It wasn't 100%.
so I also want to touch on that. So, like you said, Mahomes was playing on a bum ankle. He didn't play well at all. Or not that he didn't play well. He didn't play well in the first half, but
Yeah.
I think the field, and I'm not using this as an excuse because it was for both teams, but the field was a huge implication on the defensive lines. I don't remember what play it was, but there was a play where both Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick were about to come across the top and just crunch Patrick Mahomes, and both of them at the top of their turns, they both slipped. Like it was like a simulation. They both slipped at the exact same time in the exact same way. And like I said, that's not an excuse. Both teams had to deal with that field, but they worked on that field for 2 years. And it was probably the worst field a Super Bowl has ever seen. Now, with that being said, the Chiefs, the only sack, I put that in air quotes, the only sack they had
Yeah.
was because Jalen Hurts didn't make it past the line of scrimmage when he was scrambling.
Yeah, he ran out of bounds. That wasn't really a
And
sack.
it was, and the reason like it goes down as a sack, he's not usually one to run out of bounds. He was trying to get back to the line of scrimmage and he thought he was going to get there, so he just kind of tried to reach the ball over. But since he didn't make the line of scrimmage, it technically counts as a sack. But if you look at it, neither team really had any sacks. The defensive lines didn't really play a factor, and I think that kind of was a huge piece. Now, in the second half, I did say that the Eagles' defense played terribly because, well, they did.
They did.
But also, I think that Andy Reid did a really good job of scheming up everyone to be open.
Yeah.
It never seemed like Patrick Mahomes was under any stress in the pocket because, like I said, they were slipping, and he was always getting rid of the ball before anyone could even get there, even if someone did get to him. So he played. I think he got schemed up very well in the second half, and I mean that's what you're going to get from Andy Reid. He is probably the best coach in NFL history, and the only reason I say it above Bill Belichick is he's done it with multiple quarterbacks. You don't. I think Bill Belichick has
You
only
think
won
he's
with
the best?
Bill Belichick has only won with one quarterback. He hasn't done anything since Tom Brady's left. Andy Reid has
Understand
100 wins with two different franchises, and no matter what quarterback he has, he makes them look good. He took Donovan McNabb to a Super Bowl. Alex Smith had multiple winning seasons. He didn't go to a Super Bowl, but he did have multiple winning seasons. Patrick Mahomes has gone to 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, 5 straight AFC championships. That's a pretty good. I would
Tristan,
argue that and say Bill Belichick's up there, but I think Andy Reid is probably the best.
you think he's the best coach in NFL history?
Yes.
I agree. He's a great coach, but I simply can't put him in the greatest because, yes, he was successful in his time in Philly, but they lost a lot in Philly in terms of when it mattered. They lost a lot of NFC championship games. There was the one that they like completely got dominated by the Bucks when the Bucks are a warm weather team and they played in Philly. His time management wasn't that great, but I mean, you talk about the different quarterback thing. Joe Gibbs won 3 with 3 different quarterbacks. I think that has to be mentioned. I still would put Belichick above Andy Reid though, because Belichick, he has won so many Super Bowls, and I feel like you can't really discount that. yes, I do think Andy Reid is an all-time great coach, but I think it's way too early to say that he is the single greatest coach in NFL history because you still got your Landrys, you still got your freaking Vince Lombardi, and with Vince Lombardi, his if he hadn't passed away so young, he passed away at 59. His track record could have looked a lot better. But Andy Reid's great, but I think it's a little too overzealous to say he's the greatest.
I just think from what he has been able to do with what he had, I mean, like I said, 200 win season, 200 win teams with different franchises.
Yeah.
And he did it with the Eagles too. He took them to 3 straight NFC championships.
Mm-hmm.
He took the Chiefs to 5 straight. It's just he's while yes he might have lost when it mattered most in Philly a lot. He still did win a lot too. So I mean, when he got
give him that, but I
when
just
he
think
got
it's
fired,
notable.
when he got fired, he was jobless. He was unemployed for 6 days, not even a full week, and
Yeah.
he was hired immediately.
Well, I don't think he should have gotten him fired from Philly in the first place because, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you guys were just kind of tired of the winning but losing in the critical situations. Looking back on it, I think you have a greater, like you look back on it a lot better. But in the moment, a lot of Eagles fans wanted him fired, which I just think is really weird.
Uh, and just going back to that Jalen Hurts fumble, he only fumbled twice this season. He lost 2 fumbles. He fumbled 9 times, but only lost 2 of them.
Yeah.
So he's very good at protecting the ball. But I don't know. I think that Andy Reid is probably the best coach of all time. I will leave it up there and say it's up for debate because obviously Bill Belichick has got to be up there in the
I
conversation
mean,
too.
the debate's there, but I would put a lot of other coaches
Let,
above him.
let me put it this way because you can't argue this. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, definitely.
All right,
No doubt.
we'll put it there. So he's a very, very good coach, and I believe this is something that I also believe you might argue with me on is Patrick Mahomes is probably going to go down as the best quarterback of all time.
I've heard that a lot. He's in position to do it, but I still think it's a little early to say. Do I think there's a very good chance of that happening? Yes, absolutely. But one thing to greatness is longevity. I think you'll obviously get to it because the rules nowadays are always going to be catered to
Yeah,
the
they're
offense.
very quarterback friendly.
He's probably going to break the all the passing records, but I'll take that with a grain of salt because 4,000 yards in 2002, say, or 2005 isn't the same, and 2022 you have to kind of keep that in mind and kind of adjust the stats. But I do think it's possible. Am I still like 100% convinced? No, because you don't know what could happen. We've seen players have a great stretch and then one massive injury kind of just throws them off the
Delaire's their
rails. So,
career. Yeah.
yeah.
So, uh, the oh, that's why his rookie season he passed for not his rookie his second year playing. He passed for just under 5,100 yards, 50 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. He won MVP, Offensive Player of the Year. Was that the year they won the Super Bowl?
No,
Or was
that's the year they lost to the Patriots.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So the next season, he won a Super Bowl along with a Super Bowl MVP. The next
Yeah.
season, he was third in MVP voting. This season, he won MVP again. Obviously, won Super Bowl MVP. My big argument, like you said, it is very, very early, and that's why I said he should go down as because if
Yeah.
he continues what he's doing, then no doubt he's going to go down as best quarterback of all time. But I think even if he doesn't touch Tom Brady's numbers, which arguably right, not arguably, but obviously right now, Tom Brady, you look at any quarterback and you're saying Tom Brady's the greatest just because of his numbers, his Super Bowl wins, just all of that. You're saying Tom Brady's the best. I'm looking at it like even if Patrick Mahomes doesn't touch Tom Brady's numbers, he still just the way he manipulates the defense, moves around the field, creates offense from his legs and extending plays, I think just makes him that much better. Tom Brady was never an outside the pocket quarterback. And Patrick Mahomes has learned the ability to sit in the pocket and pass, but when he needs to extend the play and get people open. I mean, their scramble drill is a huge part of their offense. It is such a weapon for them, and that's huge. And I think that was also a big piece of the Eagles' downfall in the Super Bowl was when they needed it, he had the scramble drill. Obviously, at the end of the game, he had that 30-yard scramble to put them in field goal position, get them into the red zone. So I think even if he doesn't touch Tom Brady's numbers, he's still going down as the best quarterback of all time. And he's done more. He did more as under the age of 25 than most quarterbacks do in their entire career. So,
but to be fair, he has had one of the best supporting casts. I think that also needs to be taken into account. Like, he didn't single-handedly win the Super Bowls. He didn't, like, to win an MVP, you need players around you. So, I will say that he has had a very great system. You were put into a team that has Andy Reid, according to you, greatest coach of all time. You had a bunch of offensive pieces there, and like when he first came, their defense was actually pretty decent. It's still kind of good now.
They've put so much money into the offense.
What it was. Yeah, and they just simply couldn't afford to keep all those players.
Here's my rebuttal to your supporting cast argument. I agree. For the first couple of seasons, who was their best receiver this year?
That's fair, but they do have the best tight end in the game.
I was just about to say Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes have some sort of other connection than any other. It's like a Tom Brady Gronk connection. They have an amazing quarterback tight end connection, but I will also say Patrick Mahomes makes receivers look good who aren't that great. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had 6 receptions for 116 yards against the Bengals and a touchdown.
And part of that, I think, is they have 2 offensive geniuses on their staff with Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. I think that has to be taken into account because that good quarterback can take a system and push it further, but when you combine a great quarterback and a great system, you're going to see things like that.
Yeah. And, I mean, every quarterback is a system. Every successful quarterback is a system quarterback. Because if you put them in a system that works, then that's all that matters for winning. So I don't like that argument that they're a system quarterback because every quarterback is.
And, like, that's how you be successful as a quarterback. Trent Dilfer was successful because the system he was in was something he could do. Hand the ball off a lot and not really screw up. So,
but ultimately, I mean, the Eagles kind of fell apart in the second half. And here's the only reason I got mad. Now, I know this is the biggest controversial piece of the game was that hold at the end. And I think here's the only reason I get mad about it. Yes, James Bradbury came out and said, yeah, I tugged his jersey. It was a hold. It was the right call. The only thing I have about that is earlier in the game, he completely spun Juju around and there was no call. And then in that part of the game, it's the end of the game. Eagles are looking like they're going to get the ball back, at least get a chance. And maybe the Eagles get the ball back and do absolutely nothing. Maybe they just get completely stonewalled. They can't do anything and they lose the game anyway. So be it. That's how they should lose the game. But when you don't call a hold that is blatantly obvious earlier in the game and you call that at the end of the game, that's where it gets to me a little bit. Ultimately, I think the Eagles lost themselves the game. They shouldn't have even put themselves in that position. And if it comes down to one play like that, odds are you shouldn't deserve to win the game. But there was definitely question there. And I think aside from that, the refs called a pretty good game. There was nothing much that you really look at and you say, oh, the refs did terrible, which I think recently is a great thing because over the past couple of weeks, people have been complaining about the refs quite a bit.
Well, and I'm a Commanders fan, so I know about horrible referees. We saw a lot of horrible referees for our games, the Giants game included. But yeah, overall, I think it was a pretty good called game. Even that holding call, I mean, you could see something was there, even if it was a little ticky-tacky or on the nose.
Yeah.
There's still something there where you can say, okay, I can understand why it's a holding. Doesn't mean I agree with it. So,
and if you look at the play, now talk about ticky-tacky. I'm not really trying to throw this out there, but there was also there was a hands to the face on Josh Sweat on that play too, but I mean that is what it is. That wasn't even close to being
Yeah.
called. But also the what was I gonna throw out there? Uh, it was a little ticky tacky and it was the right call, but I mean it's just such a big call and such a big time to call the game. And I saw multiple people say if you are questionable about it, then you shouldn't be throwing the flag, especially on that stage at that point in time. Uh, but that was really the only thing that made me mad about that game. I'm I was more disappointed. Obviously, I wanted the Eagles to win. It was a close game, which is all you can ask for as an outside fan. I would have rather it be 50-0, but nothing.
Yeah, but as an
Nothing you can do
outside,
there.
well, I wasn't really an outside fan because I already lived through the Eagles winning a Super Bowl once. I didn't want to do that again. But
And
it was a very good game.
I also like Andy Reid. I love Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback, so I don't have anything against the Chiefs. I'm okay with that. So it's
Yeah, if you're gonna lose to them, if you're gonna
yeah,
lose, you might as well lose
it's
to
a
them.
very respectable duo to lose to. So I am fine with it. But Eagles fall to the Chiefs 38-35. And if you look at it, I mean, there's really not much of a future in the NFC as a whole. I mean, aside from you have three young quarterbacks, Justin Fields, who still is yet to prove anything. If the
But we
Bears,
don't know if he's gonna be there anymore because there's rumors
there
that he
there
could
is rumors he
possibly
might get traded,
and yeah,
but
there's
I
all
oh yeah. So I mean, there could get traded, but as of right now, you got three, potentially four young quarterbacks in the NFC. You got Kyler, who is going on to a new head coach, which we'll talk about in a sec. Uh,
that Kyler thing's that's weird. There's something there.
Justin Fields, who has yet to prove anything and doesn't have any receivers. You have Jordan Love, who might not be starting because Aaron Rodgers might be coming back to the Packers.
No.
But I will tell you what, from what I saw from him against the Eagles, he looked good. He
There's
was
something
slinging it.
there.
And then finally, who was the fourth that I
Sam
had?
Howell, bro.
Oh, no. Trey Lance was the fourth, who is going to have to be the starter now because Brock
Yeah,
Purdy's
but
getting Tommy John.
yeah, but we don't know what you don't know what you have
Yeah,
with Trey
all
Lance. That's a problem. And you don't
three of
know,
those four quarterbacks that I just said, you don't know what
there's
you have.
huge question marks.
So the
The only one,
Jalen Hurts is really the only surefire
yeah,
young quarterback in the NFC right now.
yeah, with Kyler Murray, apparently there's reports that people are kind of scared off from him because he apparently has a very bad reputation nowadays. You go on to Justin Fields, he showed flashes, but there's
With his
still
running,
not a lot there.
he had 2 games over 200 passing yards this season.
Yeah, and with a game that's dominated by passing, people are going to look at that and really question that. And if you go to Jordan Love, you don't know what you have there. You don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. You don't know if a team like San Francisco is going to try and sign Rodgers or trade for him. You just simply don't know.
Yeah, so there is a lot of question marks in the quarterbacks in the AFC. See, the AFC, you've already got 5, 6 proven young quarterbacks who are going to be fighting for that AFC year in year out. You got Pat Mahomes,
Yeah.
Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, 3 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
And you still have guys like Justin Herbert.
Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, like there are so many good young quarterbacks in the AFC that it is just going to be years and years of absolute chaos going in the AFC because and Trevor Lawrence.
And Russell Wilson.
I actually do think he's going to bounce back.
He could with Sean Payton.
I'm not completely on that. I'm not completely against Russell Wilson yet. So there's just I think the NFC is really the place to be right now. And like you said, Eagles rebuilt an entire team from 4-11 to 14-3 and in the Super Bowl in 2 years. So
Yeah.
losing 14 players this season, yes, it's hard, but I don't doubt that Howie Roseman won't turn nothing into something. I mean,
He's gonna pull some bull crap where you're gonna get a player for very little, and everybody's gonna be like, "What the hell? Why is this happening again?"
So it's gonna be it's definitely gonna be I'm not too worried about it. Uh, so the Eagles, and I last year I was a little bit shaky, just like every other person who watches football, with the Nick Sirianni hire, with the way his interview went and the way he was interviewing draft prospects and stuff, and he was just a very like, what are you doing? It was very risky, but I mean, I love Nick Sirianni as a head coach. Him and Jalen Hurts also seem like they have a pretty good chemistry going, so I really like the future of at least the head coach and the quarterback position. And obviously, you got to build around Jalen Hurts with that. So they look very good. And I mean, Jalen Hurts looked really good in the Super Bowl too. He was running all over the place, 3 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown. So he looked good, set all kinds of records in the Super Bowl, most rushing yards in the Super Bowl, most rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl. Had that beautiful pass to AJ Brown. Uh, threw
And
a
then
couple.
had that crappy Hail Mary that went
Yeah, I
very
don't even
short.
know what happened there. I
What
thought
was like? Why'd that happen?
I you know that feeling when you were playing backyard football when you were younger and you try to just absolutely chuck it and it goes 10
It was
yards
really
instead
short.
of 50 like you
Yeah.
think. I feel like that's what happened. Like he was just trying to send it way further than he could.
Yeah, he's probably trying harder, but that AJ Brown throw that was around the same distance as the as what the Hail Mary would have been.
I thought they were going to do like the
The
hook and
stupid
ladder
million
play.
laterals.
Yeah. I said they should have put Miles Sanders at center, but I mean, what do I know?
Oh, you're gonna pull a Cowboys and he's gonna
Yeah.
get trucked.
But uh the I don't really I don't know. I think other than that final pass, he looked really good. He played really well. You saw a couple passes to Dallas Goddard that were insanely good. Had that nice throw on the run to Devontae Smith for a first down on like
Yeah.
3rd and 12. He looks really good, and I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday and they were saying, "Oh, well, you can't just run the offense out of like the only reason that Jalen Hurts is good right now is because teams have to worry about his legs." And I go, "Well, that's their problem, not ours. Like that's
Yeah,
what you get with a
dude,
dual threat
that's
quarterback."
every single dual threat quarterback.
Yeah.
That's why there's such an allure for them. Is if you can get one that's actually pretty competent in throwing, and Jalen Hurts has become quite competent this year, then you have the dual threat. It's very difficult to scheme because if you designate like a linebacker or defensive end a spy, that means you're leaving out somebody who could possibly be covering in the backfield or covering a zone, or you could leave out a rusher. So I mean, that I think is kind of a stupid point.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like if that's how an offense needs to work. If that's how an offense needs to work, then that's how an offense needs to work. That's not really an issue. Uh, but other than that, there wasn't really anything I wanted to add. Looks like the Eagles are going to be hiring Brian Joseph. Brian Joseph or Brian? I think it's Brian Johnson. He was the quarterbacks coach this season to OC, which he was going to be a huge piece of
Who are
the
you going to
offense.
replace Gannon with? Because he's gone. He went
There,
to
yeah, there's talks about they're looking to interview, Brian Johnson to the OC, and then they're looking at interviewing Vance Joseph for the defensive coordinator. Because, so we'll scan over these just for this week because I really want to talk about them next week when we don't have any football to talk about. So we'll go over the biggest hires coming up real quick, some bigger news coming up real quick. But yes, we're looking at hiring Vance Joseph for defensive coordinator, which Gannon said he wasn't going anywhere. So Vic Fangio went to Miami, and then John Gannon went to Arizona. So that wasn't exactly ideal, but yeah, Jonathan
the Cardinals
Gannon.
saw some of the worst schemes, and like that's our guy.
And Howie Roseman, Gannon came out and said he didn't even know about the interview with the Cardinals until they were leaving Arizona. And Howie Roseman goes, "Oh yeah, by the way, you're interviewing in Arizona. You're interviewing with the Cardinals, so don't go anywhere." And he's like, okay." So I mean, him and Shane Steichen were both hired immediately. Shane Steichen going to the Colts, Gannon going to the Cardinals. Obviously, a couple other big coaching pieces. Like I said, I want to get more into depth into these next week because I think there's some interesting head coaching hires. Sean Payton to the Broncos, which I think is going to be good for Russell Wilson, but we'll
Yeah.
see. D'Amico Ryans to the Texans. He's going back, so that I really like D'Amico Ryans, and he still looks like he's 26. He
Yeah, he
he
doesn't look like he
he
ages.
doesn't age. And then, like I said earlier, Brock Purdy going through Tommy John. We'll touch on that again next week. Tom Brady retires, obviously one of the bigger pieces, and then Aaron Rodgers still up in the air about what he's going to do. Now, I did hear that Aaron Rodgers, he was saying how he still needs something to scratch that competitive itch that he has from being an NFL quarterback. And he went to golf this weekend at the Pebble Beach
Yeah.
Pro-Am and won it. So maybe
Yeah,
he
just
maybe he
play
found something
golf
new.
or like play cornhole or something. But for me, the biggest, it's not confirmed yet, but it's still in the baby stages. But there's rumors that Eric
Eric
Bieniemy,
Bieniemy to the
he's
Commanders.
currently he had a meeting with Ron Rivera yesterday, and he's currently still with them today. And apparently it's a lot more casual today, and like there's reports that there's mutual interest. So if the Commanders are able to get that done, that is a huge hiring. I think that would be if like the new owner situation like that happens this offseason, then I think Eric Bieniemy could be in the position to take over that head coaching job, and I think that would be something that would be absolutely huge for this offense because we have the pieces there. You just need to add a few more to the offensive line and maybe a tight end.
And you
Um,
need your
you
defense to be
could,
consistent.
yeah, yeah. Well,
You guys went from from the worst defense in the league to one of the best, and now next year's kind of up in the
we
air.
don't. We need to keep Deron Payne. We need to get rid of Carson Wentz, please. There's no reason we should still be employing that man. But yeah, there's still some things to do, and I think our GM really needs to not drop the ball like he did last offseason. He needs to actually do his job, but I'm not even sure how much control he has. But if we're able to get the Eric Bieniemy thing done, I think that could do wonders for this offense, and I think it could really help Sam Howell's development, even if he's a backup this year. And they find another experienced guy, or if we somehow trade for somebody, I think it'd be really good for him.
And a huge bargaining chip for the Commanders that the Chiefs don't have is in Kansas City. Andy Reid is the mastermind of the offense. The Commanders,
He'd be the complete
the Commanders
control
don't
of
have an offensive head coach like the Chiefs do.
Mhm.
So Eric Bieniemy would be in a lot more control in Washington than he is
He
in
would be
Kansas
the
City.
offense.
Yes, so that's a huge bargaining chip for the Commanders. But other than that, I think that really closes anything out for the Eagles, and we'll also talk about we'll touch on contracts too next week because, like I said, Eagles are in cap hell at the moment, so there's a lot to talk about there. So going to the NHL, as long as you have nothing else for the NFL.
Okay.
Going to the NHL post All-Star break. Nothing yet has happened with the island, or nothing yet has happened anymore on the trade deadline. I don't remember if we mentioned it, but Islanders signed Bo Horvat to an 8-year deal after he got traded there. So,
I think we did mention it. We kind of mentioned that we both thought that was a little ludicrous.
which I knew it was going to happen. I was looking at, I looked at his previous contract, and it was 5.5 million. And before he even got signed, I was sitting there thinking, because it was before his contract details came out. All we knew it was 8 years. And I was talking to a friend, and they were saying they just signed him to an 8-year deal. And I'm looking at his previous contract. I go, that's at least going to be 7 million, probably closer to 8 million. So I do remember briefly talking about that. But nothing else has happened towards the trade deadline. James Van Riemsdyk, biggest piece in the air for the Flyers. Chuck Fletcher came out and said he's being shopped around, but nothing is confirmed yet. And Nick Seeler, nothing has been confirmed on what's going to happen with him. Defenseman for us, who's played pretty decently, still young guy, so he could probably go somewhere and get a decent contract somewhere too. So, lots left to happen, but the trade deadline isn't until March 3rd, which is 2 weeks from today. So, there's still a lot of time left. And going off of that, just talk briefly about the Flyers. Since we came back from the All-Star break, not having a stellar season, we lost to the Kraken in this past home and home, lost 6-2 yesterday, but Travis Konechny has now finally overcome that hump of getting his career high in goals. He's now 26 goals on the season. So I'm really hoping that this pushes him forward and kind of gets him back on track. Owen Tippett has started to streak up more with his goal scoring. So you're starting to see some of these players that, we had questions about going into the All-Star break start to break out a little bit more and start scoring and maybe produce some more offense. So it's going to be interesting there, but I'll tell you what, when the Flyers are playing teams that they are really outmatched by, like the Kraken, you can see it. And I do have to say, props to the Kraken. Last year we were talking about how bad they were, but watching them these past 2 games, they suffocate you with speed. Like, there is nothing you can do. The Flyers had 1 shot in the first period against the Kraken yesterday. Like, so they just suffocate you with speed and make it hard for you to play the game. Kraken are good. They're definitely going to be a team to be reckoned with, so props to them. But, yeah, Flyers are just kind of in limbo right now. Nothing too great. They're 1 game under Hockey 500, and just really watching for the last 30 games and to see what players step up and how John Tortorella is going to shape this team for the future.
Yeah, the Caps really isn't much better. We're 4-6 in our last 10. How it's looking right now, we're probably going to miss the playoffs. And I'm interested to see what they do around the deadline. I know Ovi doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild, but it just makes the most sense to kind of be sellers right now, because I think there's a decent amount of players I think that we could get decent packages for, and it would clear up a lot of cap space for possibly future moves. Kuznetsov, for example, there's guys like L or Mantha, so I really don't know what they're going to do there.
Now, would this be I don't think this is really up for debate, but if Ovi doesn't want to be a part of the rebuild, does he go somewhere else to try to get that goal record?
I don't think so, because I just don't think the management would. While it would make the most sense to kind of become sellers, I don't think they will, simply for the pure fact that they probably still think they're in a position to win. They may try and do another retool, and I think that's something realistic we could do. Like, you could probably try and trade Kuznetsov and Mantha for, like, younger guys, but who are still decent. And you could still try and be competitive, but I can't really see Ovi joining another team. I think he wants to finish his career here, and we want him to finish his career here. So if it really came down to it, I don't think that the management or the ownership would even put themselves in that position.
And I mean, you guys are still in a playoff spot. You're tied with the Panthers, but you do have 1 game in hand, so that puts you ahead of them. We've been unimpressive. We've been really inconsistent. We beat the Bruins, possibly the best team in hockey, but then we lost to the Sharks in what wasn't a very close game at all. Possibly the best team in hockey? They're 41-8-5. They don't even have double-digit losses yet. I would not say that's possibly the best team in hockey. They are insane. But yeah, they're crazy right now. Flyers are 8 points back of a playoff spot, and I mean, this is just me being a hopeless fanatic, hoping that they could make some sort of push and make the playoffs, but I believe I went over it last week. Their remaining schedule is not kind to them. It's definitely going to be a rough one, but they are. Let me pull up their season from last year, because if I recall correctly, they are just short of already being a better team from what they were last season. Last season, I want to say they ended with 68 points on the season. Maybe it was 62. But I mean, they are approaching their numbers that they had last season. Obviously, Travis Konechny having a career year. Kevin Hayes is playing really well, representing the team with the All-Stars, even though I believe he definitely should not have. And it is the young guys stepping up that make this team look just a little bit better. I will say this, though. Carter Hart is just still a stellar goalie. If he were to get traded, that might be one of the only times that I am actually angry at a team for trading someone. Like Carter Hart is
61 points last year.
50. How many?
61.
61. I believe they only had 25 wins.
Yeah, 25 wins.
Yeah, so they have 22 wins currently and 54 points. So it's looking, as long as they don't completely fall apart, it's looking like they're going to break that from last season. And Torts would be having one of the better seasons that he has had as a coach in his first season with every other team. So the Flyers do look good, and it's very, if you look at Flyer fandom, it is very, hit or miss depending on who you talk to on how Torts is doing as a coach, but they're also all Bedard or bust at the moment. No one wants the Flyers to do good as a Flyers fan, but unless you're somewhat sensible, I like to call myself somewhat sensible, knowing that it's better to go into another season with a little bit of momentum on your side, with a history of focusing on a win as opposed to tanking, because when you go through a season just losing and trying to lose for someone, that's a hard culture to change. So bringing in Torts, who is rough on the team, he's been trying to do whatever he can to find a way to win. I believe every single game this season he's been switching up lines, trying to just find offensive lines. Who knows how many combinations of lines we've had all season. So he's doing whatever he can to win, even knowing that right now we don't have the talent to do so. So this is a loaded draft, though. So even if they don't get Bedard, I don't think they'll be too sad about it. And there's an off chance that maybe they win the lottery. Very off chance, but the number one team only the worst team in the league only gets an 18% chance to get the number one pick. And then I believe number 2 is 12%. So there's still a very good chance that they move up in the draft, even if they finish with a decent record. They're right around middle of the road right now with their record, and not really points, but nothing too shabby. Did you see Crosby came out and said he wanted a change in the playoff format?
Yeah, I did. I think, didn't he say he wants it back to the old 1 through 8?
Yeah, he just wants it 1 through 8 in the Eastern, which honestly I think that kind of brings in a little bit more intrigue.
Yeah.
So currently, if if it were to be like that, it would be Boston against Washington in the first round. If the playoffs were to end today, Boston against Washington in the first round. It would be Carolina against Pittsburgh. That would be the 2v7. Boston 1v8 with Washington. The 3v6 would be New Jersey against Toronto. And then the 4 and 5 would be Tampa against the Rangers.
I like that better overall, but I don't want to play the Bruins.
I think it's better because it kind of it gives the ability to see big divisional matchups later in the playoffs. Like in the current way it's set up, you're only getting an Atlantic versus Metro conference championship. You're not getting a Metro or Atlantic, which is gonna, if you do get that, then you get a, maybe more animosity towards in the game and just making
Yeah.
it that much better of a game. I think
Yeah,
that'd
I'd
be cool.
prefer it to be like that.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I also heard someone else say they should go back to the old 1 through 16. Like don't even worry about conferences, just 1 through 16,
Just
best of the best, which would create so many travel issues. Boston would play Florida round 1,
would be a nightmare.
Carolina against Washington, New Jersey against Colorado. That would be awful to travel for.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a no.
Pittsburgh against Toronto, Tampa against Edmonton. That's another decently distanced matchup. New York against LA. That's total opposite sides of America. Dallas against Seattle, and Vegas against Winnipeg.
Ew.
You got some big distances in there. Like that's not able to happen. No
Those
way.
distances are fine when it's anything other than the first round.
It's not even with that. It's like anything up until the Stanley Cup, because think about it. If you're in Carolina and somehow you pull straight East Coast matchups up until you get to the Stanley Cup, and then you pull a West Coast team, and that West Coast team also had only East Coast matchups. Carolina's in a way more favorable position because they weren't traveling as much. So that would never get passed. I think the idea of the 1 through 8, I don't think it'll get passed,
I
but
don't either, but I would prefer it.
with it out there, it definitely could happen. So that'd be interesting. But like I said, I don't think either of them are going to pass through. So that would be cool, though. But that's really all we have for NHL. Anything else from you?
So I got
Nothing major. Like I said, but trade deadline's coming up, so that should start to spur up a little bit. If it picks up, I mean, maybe it's another just a completely dead trade deadline.
I hope not.
Yeah, that's half the fun, but most teams understand that the trade deadline is where you're overpaying for anything.
Yeah.
And that's the big issue. So if you're going to do a big trade, it's usually going to happen in the offseason. But like I said, it's really it for the NHL. And then did you have anything to have for MLB other than pitchers and catchers reporting to?
Nope.
I think Andrew Painter, the Phillies' top pitching prospect, has a pretty good chance to be with the Phillies this season too. So that could.
One piece of news is the Nationals are eliminated from the playoffs.
Oh yeah, before season even starts. But yeah, Andrew Painter. That I'm excited for the Phillies. Which I'll tell you what, that also hurts. Philadelphia having technically 3, but soccer was one of them. But losing teams in the championship, that one hurts a little bit.
That's funny.
But you know how many other cities have made 3 championships in a single year?
No.
1, Boston. But it was the Celtics, and then it was like the women's basketball team and like the soccer team or something like that.
Oh.
But multiple teams have had 2. Like last year was both Tampa teams. Which, oh no, the Lightning didn't win. I was gonna say they both would have won, but Lightning didn't win. So, that's really it for this week. So with that, we are gonna end it off there. We have our Instagram and TikTok where we post big stuff on this side of the screen. And an email if you guys want to email us questions, comments to put in the show, blndc@gmail.com. Instagram and TikTok are blndc. And with that, that's going to end it off for this week. So we will see you guys next week.
See you later.